Hello everyone, in today's video, we're going to be building a portfolio website using React.js and SCSS. We'll explore the basics of both React and SCSS in this project. With that said, let's get started. Here we have the homepage of the portfolio, and at the top we have the header, which contains a brand name and a navigation menu. We also have the introduction section on the left side, which contains the name and stack of Grace. Then on the right side we have the image of Grace, with a nice hover effect. The next page, which is the About page, contains the info about Grace, such as education, skills, and social life. Notice that as we scroll, the indicator on the navigation menu also updates to show which page we're currently on, and also there's a little image of Grace at the top that shows when we scroll down. There's also the project page, which contains all the projects she has built. You can see the project title, description, and the technologies used, and also a nice effect to indicate that there are no more items to scroll. And finally, we have the contact page, which contains social links to all her social media platforms. We can also navigate through the site using the navigation menu at the top. Just click the title of the page you want. This website is also responsive. Okay, that's the end of the tour. Let's get started, shall we? But before that, make sure to give this video a like, and also to subscribe to my channel if you're new here. And to you who is a part of my 5,070 subscribers, I'm really grateful for your support. Seems words are not enough. Perhaps a portfolio project will do. Let's start by creating our project by running this command in the terminal, followed by whatever name you want. Press Enter to confirm the package name, use the arrow keys to select React, and hit Enter. Now select JavaScript and hit Enter. Now we'll change the current directory into the project directory using this command. We'll then run this command to install the necessary dependencies for the project. Now we'll run this command to open the current directory in a new window. Okay, all the folders and files have been created for the project. Let's run it using this command. As you can see, the server has started, and the project is running on port 5173. The startup template for the project is also working fine. Now let's delete all the lines and files we don't need. Okay, that's all the files we'll be deleting. The final setup will be to install SCSS, since we won't be using regular CSS. To install SCSS, we'll run this command in the terminal. Okay, the setup is now complete. We can now begin to develop the portfolio. Okay, so in the project directory, I've created an asset folder, which contains all the media we're going to use for this portfolio. We're also going to create 2 more folders, one for the components of this portfolio, and the other for all the pages. Okay, now we can move on to development. Inside app.jsx, which is the root of the portfolio, we'll add our elements and components to create the portfolio. Notice that in React, we use class name instead of class to add a class to an element. This is because the class keyword is used in another concept in React called class components. Now, the next step is to create our components. Let's start with the header section of the portfolio. For that, let's create a component and name it header. But before we save this and get error messages, let's create the files for this component. Inside the components folder, we can create another folder for the header component. This folder will contain a JSX file for the structure and an SCSS file for the styling. In the header.jsx file, we can type RAFCE to automatically generate a functional component for this header. Or you can manually type this if you want. If you want to use this pro technique, you must install this extension for it to work. We don't need this React import, so we'll replace it with the SCSS file instead. This syntax // indicates that the file we are importing, header.scss, is in the same directory as the current file, header.jsx. Then finally there's this export at the bottom of the component. This way we can import this component in other files. Now, there are 2 ways to export a file, or in this case this component. This is one way, which is called default export, and the other way is called named export. Both these methods have their own way of importing them into other files. First, let's use the default export and see how we will import the component in other files. To import a default export, this is the method used. Take note that this name, header, can be whatever you want, just ensure that the path is right. So as you can see, the content of the header component has been rendered on the page. Let's make a few changes to the component. And oh, you must have realized that anytime I change the opening tag of an element, the closing tag automatically updates. This is also another extension you can install to help you increase productivity, by saving you that extra time to close every tag you open. Okay, you must be asking yourself this question: what is a component? Well, think of a component as a function. When you create a function, you can call that function several times to perform a specific task. That's the main and whole idea behind components. You create a component with the content and elements you want, then you can use that component wherever necessary to render the same set of elements. Let's add several elements to this component. Note that, if there are more than one elements in a component, then we must wrap all of them in a root element. So as you can see, all the elements are rendered on the page. Now, you might ask yourself this question also: why use components, when you can just put all the elements in one file? The problem with putting all elements and content into one file is that it becomes difficult to manage as the project scales. By using components, you get to reduce the number of lines in a file. Think about it this way: is it better to leave all these elements here? This is even considerable. Imagine you have a large amount of elements here. Is it better to leave them right here, or put all of them in a component and use the component here instead? Okay, I think that's enough for components. Let's continue with the other method to export and import components. Remember, this method is called named export. And to import this component, we have to wrap the name of the export with braces. Also, unlike default export, which you can use whatever name you want to import the component, this method requires you to specify the correct name of the export. The choice of using named or default export depends on you, but I recommend that you use default exports. Yet again, that's my preference. You might choose to use named exports. Both methods will yield the same result for this project and any other as well. Okay, now I hope you have a decent understanding about components and their usage, and also the different methods of import and export. Let me know if you want a specialized video about those concepts and any other. For now, let's continue with our portfolio. Alright, so I'll get rid of this H1. Now I'll go ahead and define the structure of the header. As you can see, there is a default margin for every element on every web page, so I'll go ahead and overwrite this property. By using the asterisk selector, we can select every single element in the DOM, and by setting the margin property to 0, we'll remove the default margin on every element. Now I'll go ahead and add some custom styles to the page, such as a minimum height, alignment of elements, font family of texts, and a background color. Alright, so as you can see, the styles have taken effect on the page, just like we wanted. We're going to use an image for the background of the page. Okay, everything is working as expected. Let's continue with the header. Alright, so as you know in CSS, when you want to style a nested element without any issues, this is the syntax used to select the nested element. Using SCSS allows you to also nest the styles of elements, just like how their structure is nested. So using this nesting feature provided by SCSS, I'll go ahead and add the styles for the elements in the header. The style nestings are going to be the same as their structure. Okay, we're almost done with the styles for the header. Now for this indicator element, we're not going to give it a fixed width. Instead, we'll use JavaScript to determine the width of the first element in the navigation menu, then use that to set the width of the indicator. But for testing purposes, let's give it a temporary width. One feature of SCSS is that it allows the use of the AND operator in an element's style, which refers to the current element being styled. Okay, that's all for the header styling. Let's move on to handling the logic of the navigation menu. So first, we need to import a hook, called the useEffect hook, and this hook is used for handling side effects in a component, such as making an API request. And so you might wonder, what then are we going to use this hook for, since we're not making any API request or any form of side effects in this component? As you can see, the useEffect hook takes a callback function as its first argument, then an array called dependency array as its second argument. Every statement inside the callback function will run once when this component has been mounted. So here, we're going to select each of the list items in the navigation menu, and also the indicator. We're also going to compute the width of the list items and use it to set the width of the indicator. All of that needs to occur only after this component has been mounted, and that's why we're using this hook. Now, after selecting the list items in the indicator, we're going to create a function, and this function, when called, will compute the width of the first list item in the navigation menu, then set the width of the indicator using the computed width. This function will also compute the left position of the first list item, then update the left position of the indicator. Now, using the computed values, we'll update the respective attributes of the indicator. You must be wondering why I added 28 to the width, and that's because this statement right here will return the exact width of the list item, no space around, and so, adding the extra 28 pixels, and also if you remember we translated the indicator by -14 pixels, which is half of 28. This will ensure a decent spacing around the list items. Now, all we have to do is call this function. Okay, just as expected, the width of the indicator has been updated, and also when the page is reloaded, the function will be called again. Now, the final step is to move the indicator to the position of the list item when it is clicked. For this, we're going to call a function for each of the list items when it is clicked. So, when a list item is clicked, we'll get its width and left attributes. Using that, we'll set the respective attributes of the indicator. Okay, now we'll add the active class. That's what we use to change the color of an active list item. We'll also remove the active class from the previous list item that had the active class when we click on another item. So, after all that, this is the final result of the header component. Okay, that's all for the header. Let's move on to the home page. If you don't get something really well, take the time to go through the code to understand. I'm also preparing a video on the React hooks, to help you understand them better, and how to use them effectively. Alright, so we're going to use the main tag here, and inside this main tag is where we're going to put all the pages. Note that, you can't have multiple main tags in your website. The main tag is primarily used to display the main content of a website. So inside this page is where we'll add our home page elements. We're going to include several pages for the other content. Now we're going to style the main element, and also style the page elements that will be included in the app. Okay, now let's create the files for the home component. Okay, now in the home.jsx file, we can use the shortcut RAFCE, or you can also do RFCE, which stands for React Functional Component Export. This will give you the normal function syntax. On the other hand, RAFCE will give you the arrow function syntax. After including the SCSS and importing the component into the app, we can check the browser for the result. Okay, it seems the header is covering it. We can confirm by removing the header from the app. So as you can see, it's working as expected. Let's go ahead and add the content of the home page. The home page is divided into two sections, the details section which contains the intro and name, and the profile section which contains the profile image of Grace. I'll go ahead and add the content of the details section. Alright, that's all we'll need in the details section. Let's check in the browser. Okay, everything seems to be working. Let's go ahead and add the styles. Alright, I think that will be all for the styling of the details section. Now let's add the elements of the profile section and style it as well. For that, we'll import the image from the assets folder and use it as the source of the image tag. Okay, now let's add the styles. Alright, that's all for the homepage. Let's move to the next page. Alright, for the next page, we're going to duplicate this, then replace the home component with the about component, which we'll be creating in a bit. But before that, I'll make sure to correct the ID of this page, and that of the home page also. Now let's go ahead and create the files for this component. Seems the home component wasn't created in the right folder. I'll quickly fix that by moving it to the Pages folder. When you change the location of a file, you'll get a prompt to update their imports, so let's check to make sure the imports were updated. Okay, as you can see, the imports were updated. Let's confirm in the browser to make sure everything is still working. Okay, we can now continue from where we left off. Okay, after creating the component and importing it, let's confirm in the browser. Alright, we can now add the structure for this page. We'll have two sections of this page as well, the name section and the info section. I'll go ahead and structure the name section. Okay, now let's add the styling for the name section. Okay, we're done with the name section. Let's move on to structure the info section. Inside the info section, we're going to create cards, which will contain some details about Grace, such as skills, education, and socials. Okay, now let's style the info card. Now, we need to create more cards for the other info, but duplicating this entire card isn't the right way to go. Instead, we'll create a component for this card, and we'll be able to reuse the component multiple times. Let's make sure to create the files for this component. Okay, now I'll paste the info card structure here. Now let's make sure to import it. Then we can reuse this component multiple times. As you can see, reusing the component saves us from typing the whole structure of the card for each of the info. Now, we have to change the title and details of each info. We'll do that using the concept of props. Props are data passed down to components. So for this component, we'll give it a prop, whose name is title, and its value will be the title of the info card. We'll do the same for the details. We'll pass it using this prop named details, and its value will be the details of the info card. Now we can access both of these props inside the component. All we need to do is to destructure the name of the prop we want from the props object. Then to use it, we must wrap the name with braces. So now, when the component is mounted, it's going to take the values of these props, then render them in their slots. And now, since the first card is the one having the props, we'll only see that in the browser. The other card components are also being mounted, but since they don't have the title and details props, we won't be able to see them. So, I'll go ahead and add the title and details props for the other cards. Okay, so as you can see, all the cards are mounted and displayed as expected. And so that will be all for this page. Let's move on to the next. And that will be the quick links. For this section, we're not going to put it in a page, since it doesn't have to be one. I'll go ahead and start with its structure. Now, since we're going to have multiple links here, the best choice will be to use a component, just like we did before with the info cards. Now, we'll pass the logo and title of the link as props, so we can access and render the different logos and titles of each link. After giving a value to the title and logo props, let's make sure to import the logo from the Assets folder. Now, let's create the files for this component. I'll go ahead and structure the content of this component. Let's get the prop values into the component by destructuring the property names. Now, let's add the styling for this component. Okay, now let's make sure to import the component into our app. Now we can save this and check the browser. Okay, now we can reuse this component for the remaining social links. We'll just change the logo and title for each component and that's it. Okay, I've changed the title and logo of each component, and imported the logos as well. Now let's check the browser for the result. Everything seems to be working as expected. So that's all for the quick links section. Let's move on to the projects page. Okay, so we'll start by creating the page element, then create the projects component. After creating the components files, let's make sure to import it into the app. Okay, seems to be working as expected. Now, let's go ahead and structure the page content. Now we're going to create the first project inside this page element. The project will have two sections, the details section and the image section. The details section will contain the name, description, and the technologies used for the project. Now let's add the styling for the details section. Okay, that's all for the styling and the errors. Now, as you may have guessed, since we're going to have multiple projects on this page, it will be better to make this into a component that we can reuse. Okay, so after making the project into a component, we can see we still have the same interface. Now we can duplicate this to get multiple project templates. Okay, now we need to change the details of each project, so we'll pass the data using props. We'll use the data that we'll pass as props inside this component to get different details for each project. Using the array of tags that we're going to pass to this component, we'll map through each tag to create an element. Now let's go ahead and pass the data to the component. Here we're going to create the array of tags which we'll pass to the component, using the useState hook. The useState hook is used in React to initialize variables. What makes it different from the regular variable declaration in JavaScript is that the useState hook causes re-render, meaning when the value of the variable changes, the browser will automatically update the content of the page. Unlike regular variables, whose values remains the same on the page, even when updated. Okay, I guess that should be all for the styles. Now let's fix the tags. Okay, so now what we're going to do is to make the tag element into a component. That sums it up for the projects page. Now if we want to add a new project, we just reuse the template, then make the necessary changes to the details. Okay, that's all for the projects page. Let's move on to the last and final page. Okay, let's duplicate the project page, then make the necessary changes. Now, let's create the files for this component. Now let's make sure we import it into the app and check the browser. Okay, it's working as expected. Let's go ahead and structure the page. For this section, we're going to use the social component that we created and used earlier. Let's make sure it's imported, then pass the props for this component, which are logo and title. Now let's import the logo as well. Okay, now, we'll duplicate this component for the others, and make the necessary changes. Then let's import the logos for the others also. Okay, now I'll go ahead and add the styling for this page. Okay, that's all for this page. Now let's go ahead and add some functionalities. Okay, we're done with all the pages. All that is left is to add some functionalities and final touches. We're going to update the indicator to indicate the current page in the navigation as we scroll. We've already completed that for when we click on the links. Now, using the same logic, we'll make it slide to indicate the current page as we scroll. We're also going to hide this profile initially, then when we scroll past half of the home page height, we'll reveal it. Okay, let's get to work. Let's go ahead and initially hide the profile image in the header. Now, when we scroll past half of the home page height, we're going to add an active class to the profile. Using that, we'll reveal the image by translating it back to its original position. So now, we can't see it. Let's go ahead and add the logic to the page. Now, all these functionalities need to be active only when the components are mounted and have been rendered on the page. For that, we're going to be using the useEffect hook. Now in here, we're going to be selecting some elements that we'll be using for other functionalities as well, such as the navigation links and the indicator. Alright, after selecting all the elements that we're going to need, we'll now create a function. This function is going to handle all the functionalities as we scroll, when called. Now, the first thing is to reveal the profile when we scroll past half of the home page height. For that, we're going to track the bottom position of the home page, which is the first in the array of pages returned by the query selector all. And by using this statement, we'll get the bottom position of the home page as we scroll. The other property we need is the height of the home page. This will let us be able to compute whether we've scrolled past half of the height or not. So now, while we scroll and keep getting the current position of the bottom of the home page, we're going to check if the bottom position is less than half of the height of the home page. Remember that, as we scroll, the bottom of the home page keeps coming up. So as it's coming up, we're checking if the position has passed half of the height of the home page. If it has, then we'll add an active class to the profile. If not, we'll remove the active class. Okay, let's call this function now, and also call it when we scroll. So as you can see, when we scroll past half of the home page, the active class is added to the profile, and the image is revealed. Now, let's go ahead and add the logic for the indicator. How most people go about this is to manually check the top positions for every single page. Even though it's going to work, we're too lazy to go through that trouble for every single page. Instead, we're going to use a loop to check the top positions of all the pages at once. So here, when we scroll, this loop is going to run for 4 times, since that's the number of pages we have. Now, on the first loop, the top position of the current page is going to be computed, using this statement. On the second loop, the second page, until the top position of the last page is computed. This is going to run every single time we scroll, and always return the top positions of each page. Now, using the values returned, we're going to check if any of them is less than 300. If so, then that page is in view. Therefore, we're going to add the active class to the corresponding link in the navigation menu. Remember that the active class in the navigation just changes the color to white. We now have to move the indicator into the right position. For that, just like we did in the header component, we'll get the width and left offsets of the link. Using those values, we'll update the position of the indicator. You already know why we're adding 28 pixels to the width. We talked about it during the header component. Okay, after updating the position of the indicator, let's check the results on the page. So as you can see, the indicator is updating as we scroll, but the previous links still maintain the active class. Let's fix that. So here, before adding the new active class, we're going to remove any active class from the elements. Okay, that should fix it. So as you can see, everything is working as expected. The next thing we're going to do is style the scroll bar, both vertical and horizontal scroll bars. Okay, now the scroll bars are styled. The final thing we're going to do is to fix this issue. We're going to add a smooth scrolling effect to the page. Okay, so that brings us to the end of this video. And also I didn't include the responsiveness part to the video, since that would have made this video way longer. So as an assignment, you can work on that part yourself. Take it as a means of upgrading your skills, try to get the same results as mine, or even better. Then you can submit your work to me on my Instagram. Finally, you can check out my Patreon, which I've linked down in the description. You'll find the source codes of this and many other projects along with their responsiveness. So I guess this is the part where I say thank you for watching, and subscribe and give this video a like, but I'm not going to say any of that. So, I'll see you in the next one.